August 29th, 2005. The day.
We about to get this thing started. Make sure we smash up the likes, smash up the likes, smash up the likes, ladies and gentlemen. In a few minutes, we'll get our show started. And we'll remember two things we're doing tonight. We're remembering Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. I said Rita because the anniversary is coming up on September 1st for that. But Hurricane Ida was also on this month as well, when it impacted and hit New Orleans, although a far lesser strength than Katrina, or I should say, although the impact was felt. And we're going to be remembering those anniversaries today. So we're going to get started. Make sure you smash up the likes, ladies and gentlemen. Smash up the likes. And make sure you hit that share, subscribe button. whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today, but if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on through our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace. On everybody, smash up the like, smash up the likes, smash up the likes. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition, exciting edition of Random Topic Thursdays, the hottest live stream in the cosmos of social media, whether you're watching on Rumble, Facebook, or YouTube. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Shout out to my family on X as well. I need y'all to hit that notification bell so when we go live, you know we're live. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. And we're talking about two things tonight. Of course, you can see from the avatar. We're talking about I'm sorry, hold on. They have the interview going on with Vice President Kamala Harris and the presidential candidate Tim Walz, vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. And there's a lot of people who've been commenting on it. We're going to actually go to it in a second. We'll go through and dice it up. I think this is an hour-long interview. It's a joint interview. CNN is she did this interview with Dana Bash at CNN, which is to me not a surprise. She would go on CNN because y'all know CNN is very liberal as far as its as far as its programming. It's always geared towards the Dems, and of course, she's doing this also without with by herself. She's actually doing this in a joint interview with Tim Walz, who is her vice presidential uh, running mate. So we're going to look at and play some of what's going on. And I know I scheduled this. This is all coming on during the damn video, the football game, Coach Prime with Colorado versus, I think Colorado's playing, uh, who's Colorado playing? Colorado is playing North Dakota. That's it. All right. So they're going through the video. I don't want to. Obviously, there's going to be a copyright if I play some of it, so I got to talk through it. But I'll just show it. The shortest presidential campaign in history is what they're calling it, which it is. Fair use. So we got to put the fair use in here, and we're going to talk through it. So,
Madam Vice President, Governor Waltz, thank you so much for sitting down with me and bringing the bus. Bus tour is well underway here in Georgia. You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history. The voters are really eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward. in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation. And I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be. And I think many of these things that the vice president's proposing are things that we share in values. Child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by a third. We did it in Minnesota to have a federal partner in this. Unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
You talked about, you call it the opportunity economy. You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability. One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American people know it, I know it, which is why my agenda includes what we need to do to bring down the price of groceries. For example, dealing with an issue like price gouging, what we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years, what we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment aspiration in a way that allows them to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited, I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office, child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%. When we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking.
And this has already
As Vice
came
President,
out
I did not
earlier
ban
today.
fracking. As
So some
president,
people
I
have been
will not ban
criticizing
fracking.
him.
In 2019, I believe,
heard this
in a
part.
town hall, you said, you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. To do that, we can do what we have accomplished thus far. The inflation what we've already done, creating over 300,000 new clean energy jobs. That tells me, from my experience as vice president, we can do it without banning fracking. In fact, Dana, excuse me, I cast the tie-breaking vote that actually increased leases for fracking as vice president. So I'm very clear about where I stand.
And was there some policy or scientific data that you saw that you said, oh, okay, I get it now?
What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Okay. Another issue, big one, is immigration. As vice president, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration in southern countries and
northern part of Central America.
The northern part of Central America that affects the southern border of the U.S. Mm-hmm. During the Biden-Harris administration, there were record numbers of illegal border crossings. Why did the Biden-Harris administration wait 3.5 years to implement sweeping asylum restrictions?
Well, first of all, the root causes work that I did as vice president, that I was asked to do by the president, has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by American businesses in that region. The number of immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which is the border. And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted, which we supported, which I support. And Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border. And because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill. A border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. And let me tell you something, the Border Patrol endorsed the bill. And I'm sure in large part because they knew they were working around the clock, and 1,500 more agents would help them. That bill would have allowed us to increase seizures of fentanyl. Ask any community in America that has been devastated by fentanyl what passing that bill would have done to address their concern and a pain that they've experienced.
So you would push that legislation again. I just want to
Not
ask
only
about,
push it, I will make sure that it comes to my desk and I would sign it.
just one other question about something that you
They
said
could have done that in
2019
2021 when they had the
there was a
Congress.
debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. As an example, that value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed. So that is the reality of it. And 4 years of being vice president, I'll tell you, one of the aspects to your point is traveling the country extensively. I mean, I'm here in Georgia. I think somebody told me 17 times since I've been vice president in Georgia alone. I believe it is important to build consensus, and it is important to find a common place of understanding of where we can actually solve problems.
On that note, you had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone in mind?
Would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse, but I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
That was just the start of our wide-ranging conversation, and we have some never-before-shared details about the phone call that changed everything between President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm just curious, staying on President Biden.
I'll take a commercial break.
When he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
Where's Salad Annie?
I asked him about some of the controversies that have sprung up since Harris put him on the ticket. Governor Waltz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Trying to lead him on. Leading
Kamala
question.
Harris, Donald Trump, the debate everyone's been waiting for.
Speaking of that debate, let me mute this commercial. They already, and this come out, they have already stated, I'm going to go back to me for a second, that the vice president was trying to change the rules regarding the debate. And essentially, she wanted an open mic to keep the mics open instead of muted. And the ABC News, surprisingly, they rejected and declined that. According to New York Post, ABC News has declined to adopt Vice Presidential candidate Harris's bid to keep the mics open. So why is this thing keeps popping up? Sorry, I keep getting these ad pop-ups. So a network email that was reviewed by the Post. I'm going to just go to the news article right quick. Oh, Jesus. They said no audience, no pre-written notes or props and muted mics when a candidate is not speaking. They said the candidates will only be standing on stage and will only be allowed to have a pen and paper and a bottle of water. Now, Harris's team claimed on Monday that they wanted both candidates' mics on for their entire 90-minute forum. A top Trump ally said ABC News informed both campaigns in writing last week that it would employ the CNN rules, and both confirmed that September 10th it was a go. At this point, Team Harris is going to be taking an L when they finally accept, as the debate rules aren't changing, or they'll take an even bigger L if they back out of the debate because the Dana Bash CNN interview goes poorly. If they back out of the debate because the CNN Dana Bash interview goes poorly. So this has already come out, and people, especially on the right, and I know they've already biased against it, so they're going to come out and say something negative. So, which is what they all do. They're always going to have something negative to say about it, about a candidate. Of course, I wish that her interview would have been by herself, because how can she handle it? A lot of people are saying she's doing that, and it would appear for support. Now, let's go ahead and let's see if we can go back to this. Is going to be on a commercial for a little bit, but they're going to go to Tim Walz. So that was a 17. They ran for 17 minutes without a commercial. So it might not be a little bit longer before it comes back on. But what do y'all think of the debate? Who's here? Smash up the likes. Let me know who's in here in the chat. Got 4 people watching. More than that. We got 10. This is a Thursday night. I know they got football and stuff going on, and we're talking about that. We're talking about also tonight. I'm going to do a follow-up after the interview, this debate interview. This is not a debate, this interview with Dana Bash. So let's go back. It looks like it's back on, y'all. So here we are. Fair use, by the way, CNN.
When Harris was a senator watching Trump's State of the Union address. Now it's Trump watching Harris on the campaign trail with money and momentum behind her and making her case directly to voters.
As voters are getting to know Kamala Harris, they want answers on how she will make their lives better. She heard that here at Sandfly Barbecue in Savannah.
What we're going to do to increase access to capital for small businesses, I'll be rolling out next week. Part of what we're going to be doing in terms of a tax credit.
On the trail, she talks about her experience, years in the courtroom as a district attorney and eventually California's attorney general. She wants to reframe the contest as the prosecutor versus the felon.
I know Donald Trump's type. I've been dealing with them my whole career.
The former president is turning to a well-defined playbook of personal attacks.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
And in just 12 days, the nominees will meet face-to-face for the first time.
She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
If you got something to say it to my face.
I want to ask you about your opponent, Donald Trump. I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that You have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn Black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any?
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
Yes, he got it.
Okay. Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander in chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I am unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
but no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed since I've been on October 8th to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Governor Waltz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war,
Yeah.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I just one other question, because again, this is all new.
Yeah.
I mean, this was not however many days ago. This was not on either of your bingo cards, especially yours. You had to clarify that you had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children. And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out, former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly own my mistakes when I make them. The one thing I'll tell you is I wished in this country wouldn't have to do this. I spoke about our infertility issues because it's hell, and families know this. And I spoke about the treatments that were available to us that had those beautiful children there. That's quite a contrast in folks that are trying to take those rights away from us. And so I think people know who I am. They know that record. They've seen that. I've taught thousands of students. I've been out there, and I won't apologize for speaking passionately, whether it's guns in schools or protecting of reproductive rights. The contrast could not be clearer between what we're running against. The Vice President's position on this has been clear. And I think most Americans get it if you've been through that. I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI. I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a beautiful child.
Up next, the moment that changed everything when Kamala Harris got a phone call from President Biden that he was dropping out of the race.
It was a Sunday, so here I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces.
Speaking of those baby nieces, the Vice President also opens up about a viral picture from the convention that meant so much to so many. And Tim Walz talks about that convention moment with his son that brought many viewers to tears. You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that.
The pros, Sam, I got news for you. We're pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But what are the cons?
We could run under. I don't want the copyright strike, so I just put that was just the commercial that was running. So far you've heard they spoke about Walz, his military record and so forth, and he's addressed these controversies supposedly. I'm just gonna go back over them. I have to step out for a minute. Some people are commenting. What's going on, Cheryl? I stepped out for a moment. Did he talk about his tampons? They say if I had to look at it, it wasn't part of the actual. There were no tampons in the bathroom, or they were just the rule just made it more available for kids to have if they go to the doctor's office or nurse's office in schools. But the key is that, and they don't make the distinction. They use it for anybody. So that's something. Why are children being exposed to this stuff? It comes down to ultimately, they can't say. They can say it, but they won't. Now, yeah, I get it. You know, I've talked to some people and some teachers who say, well, we need this, we need that. They need this in school, but it's not being made clear. Well, but when you look at the Democrats and the stuff they are supporting, like trans in school, you know, in the boys' locker room, in the girls' locker room, excuse me, like the NCAA swimmer who joined the girls' team, or the wrestler, the Dems are the ones that support that. The Biden administration supports that. So guess what? If you're voting for it and you don't like seeing this stuff, or if you want to see more, if you don't like seeing this stuff, then tell me, especially, yes, you may not like Trump, but why are you voting for him? Because they're not going to change. They support this stuff. At the end of the day, ultimately, yeah, and diversity and identity are important things, but that's not something that should be the priority. The top priority. Who's competent? Who can do this? Who knows how to balance a budget? That's what we should be looking at. But y'all know what's going on too. I was talking briefly. Did y'all know they had this story? So this happened out. We're talking about illegal immigrants. There was a video that's going around of an armed crew of what they call, I'm assuming they're saying these are some Venezuelan gangs. This is what they're talking about that just showed up. I'm going to get back to the interview in a minute, but this was on New York Post. I saw this. I even saw the video on Twitter that was trending. Well, I say Twitter, on X is trending. So you had a crew of gun-wielding men who went up to this apartment this was out in Colorado, and supposedly it's being overrun by a prison gang from Venezuela. Now, you're going to see the video in a second because they're going to play it. It's circulating online. So this is it here. So this was captured by another neighbor from across the hall. So that's the security camera. Second clip. Yeah. Oh, that's dead, guys. Basically, what they did is, according to the report, this is a clip. The video showed a prison gang shot caller by the name of Juanardi Jose Pacheco Chirino, who took part in an assault and then a shooting at the Fitzsimmons Place apartment complex in Aurora. They have recently shut down over code violations, what the owner said they couldn't fix due to a takeover by the building of the gang. So what they're saying is the gang's taking over the apartment complex. And this is according to documents that have been obtained by the Post. Now, I'm not a big fan of the New York Post per se, but this is a Fox 31.
Here, I have the new video surfacing today showing a huge problem with what some are calling gang violence at an apartment complex in Aurora. The video shows men entering an apartment building with several weapons and then busting down a door.
And all of this taking place at the apartments, which had become a crime hotspot in that city. Fox 31's Vicente Arenas was at that complex today as people were moving out, fearing for their safety. Vicente is joining us live from that complex with a closer look at that eye-opening video, Vicente.
It is eye-opening, Erica. It is significant because this is the first time we've actually seen what has been happening inside that apartment complex at different times. This video, there's two different clips you're about to see. One of them, people carrying guns, and another where two people are just trying to break down a door.
The video shows a group of men walking up a stairwell at the edge of the Lowry apartment complex in Aurora. All of them appear to be carrying rifles and handguns, and the video shot earlier this month. One of the men can be seen talking on a cell phone. They all then gather around a door and go in. Another video clip shows men forcing a door open, but what or who they were searching for, not clear. The video was shot in the building where Cindy and Edward Romero lived until today. They loaded up their stuff and moved out.
It's been a nightmare and I can't wait to get out of here.
This is how Cindy used to lock her front door.
Every day when we come home, we have to do this. Every time we go outside to take out the garbage, every time we try to go to bed at night, we have to keep it like this so nobody can kick in the door.
The couple's car and many others here were riddled with bullets after a shootout at the complex earlier this month. The Romeros say the trouble started when a large number of migrants began moving in. They had not been able to move out for different reasons.
We couldn't get any. We tried reaching out to the resources, but they told us since it wasn't actually a condemned building, we would have to wait until that was the issue, but we didn't want to wait for that. So the only help I got was after talking to you.
We showed Councilmember Danielle Jurinsky the video. Today, she helped the couple move out and find a new place to live.
The city nonprofits have lined up to help the migrants that have come here, but nobody is helping the American citizens, the residents that are trapped in these apartment complexes.
The Romeros tell us others living here have been asking when they'd be moving out.
And this isn't just Americans. This is other Venezuelans that are living under this control, that are being extorted by the control of this gang.
While we were on the property today, even before we left, we were told other people were moving in and taking over the Romeros unit.
We did speak to the mayor's office this afternoon. They sent us a statement saying that so far there are no code enforcement violations taking place at this complex. The mayor's office also responding in part for the Aurora Police Department. They're telling us that the police department here has seen that video that we just showed you. There is a lot more to this story. We'll be covering it in the days to come. Reporting live outside the criminal code.
Breaking and entering. Aggravated assault. Well, there's nobody in the video you're assaulting, but if they're breaking into somebody else's building, that's an apartment, their home, that's a burglary. So they got all that stuff going on. Yeah. And, you know, our elected officials, 2024 November is coming up, guys. They're not saying anything. I didn't hear anything so far saying she's going what they plan to do about stuff like this. But your local law enforcement, your local leaders, your state leaders are just as much as culpable too. I have to say that. You heard what they saw. They saw that video. They ain't trying to get involved in that.
Sure.
So let's go back. Let's play the rest of the interview.
About that phone call and exactly what Kamala Harris was doing when she answered. But we started this discussion with the moment that set all of this in motion, CNN's presidential debate, and whether President Biden was strong enough to lead this nation again.
They knew his cognitive.
Vice President Harris, you were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve another 4 years. Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that. And so, one, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped, I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
Because we haven't had a chance to talk, I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces. And we had just had pancakes and, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle. And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
He was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, "I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you."
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you. My first thought was about him, to be honest. I think history is going to show a number of things about Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we have accomplished around finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies, in new industries, what we have done to bring our allies back together and have confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance, what we have done to stand true to our principles, including the one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary successes, but the character of the man is one that he has been in his life and career, including as a president, quite selfless and puts the American people first.
A passionate defense of the man who chose her to be his running mate 4 years ago. 4 years later, Harris made a choice of her own. And with Governor Walz's rise to national prominence, a star was born at the convention, Gus Walz. We'll hear about that moment between father and son and the woman who could make history in the Oval Office on this iconic photo. Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
The TV moments that took culture over the edge. People were watching, and then
was supposed to be, if you listened to some
fast
experts, a
forwarding
big
through
name,
it because
a
I had
prominent
paused
leader
for a
from a
little
swing
bit.
state, Pennsylvania
Let's
or
go ahead and
Arizona.
finish this.
But it is a
Fair use.
well-known guy outside of his home state, where Minnesota nice is a source of pride. But behind all of that folksy humor and flannel, Tim Walz is far from just being Mr. Nice Guy when it comes to needling Donald Trump. Governor, you obviously have spoken to voters all over your state for years.
Yeah.
What are you learning in a place like Georgia?
We're seeing explosion in small business growth. The one thing is workforce and childcare, because workers have to have childcare.
Campaigning with Tim Walz.
Don't do it.
Finding his role in this historic campaign.
Would you be my running mate and let's get this thing on the road?
I would be honored, Madam Vice President.
After bursting onto the national stage with this word.
These guys are just weird.
Known as a folksy father of two from rural America, now a running mate who is not holding back.
Listen to the guy. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind.
And finding his own rhythm with his new boss.
What'd you order? Brisket and greens and mac and cheese.
What about you?
I had the brisket and coleslaw on this.
And what about the spice situation, the Tabasco? What's happening with that?
I'm going to let him speak for himself.
The vice president's growing peppers at her residence, so she's trying to bring me along on this. You know, Minnesotans.
It's okay.
I'm getting there.
It's all good. You just do you.
I just have to ask you both about two standout moments, aside, of course, from the addresses that you both gave, but standout moments that were perhaps unexpected during the convention. You mentioned one of them, Governor. A moment that you shared, that the world shared with your son, Gus. You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that. I'm grateful for so many reasons to be on this ticket, but that moment, to understand what was really important, to have my son feel a sense of pride in me, that I was trying to do the right thing. And it was, you try and protect your kids, it brings notoriety and things, but it was just such a visceral, emotional moment that I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Hope. I'm proud of Gwen. She's a wonderful mother, and these are great kids. And I think the one thing is, talking about the era we're in, is our politics can be better. It can be different. We can show some of these things, and we can have families involved in this. And I hope that there was.
It's going like I
hope
kind of
people felt that
expected,
out there, and
guys.
I hope they hug their kids a little tighter, because you just never know, and life can be kind of hard.
And last question, Madam Vice President, the photograph
that
has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking
Yes.
about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment, for all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids, and then I'm in the front of the photograph, obviously speaking. And it's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
Did she talk to you about it afterwards?
Oh God!
Oh, she had a lot to talk about.
Damn.
She had
Oh, this laughing.
She listened to
I can hear Judge
everything.
Joe Brown
She
watching
listens
this.
to everything.
Give you your hot takes.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Madam Vice President,
Yeah.
Governor Waltz, thank you so much for your
Thank you
time.
so much, Governor.
Appreciate it.
Thank
for
you.
having
Thank you,
us.
Dana. Thank you.
This was Vice President Harris's first real unscripted setting where voters could see
Not
and hear
alone.
her
Not
explain some
alone,
of her
though.
policy positions now and
I
how
don't
they
know about
differ from
scripted. This was
before she
live
became
and
Vice President and why.
taped.
And this was the first we heard those details about an extraordinary phone call from a president dropping out of the race and endorsing his vice president. Something.
How many takes y'all think they did on this? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I played it. I played the whole thing. So now they're going back to the studio with CNN, of course.
We have them all here. Dana, you've given us a lot to chew on. Our hats off to you. Thank you very much. Stick around, though. We will make sure to come back to you throughout the next hour. I want to get in the room here to get some initial reactions with our great panel. David Axelrod, let's start with you.
Let's look at this.
What did you make
Panel
of
has to say.
how Vice President Harris did she meet the moment?
Yeah, I think she did what she needed to do. What she needed to do was be the same person that people have seen.
There's still no policies on her website.
And have seen a new sense of sort of confidence, of calm and comfortable comfort that we haven't seen before from her. We didn't see certainly the last time she ran. She was very connected to her word. She seemed strong. She seemed competent. She seemed like someone who could be president of the United States. That was the first test. One thing, because I know we got a lot of opinions here.
We have time for yours. Don't worry.
But I think well, two things.
Of course, they know. Adam said they know it's stunk.
She handled the issue of her changes or perceived changes in policy pretty well. I mean, I think the idea that her values have been the same and have been consistent was a good bridge there. One thing that I want to note is we were asking the question earlier, how will she handle the president and will she separate herself from the president? And there might be some political logic to doing that. She's talking about turning the page. Does she want to be a continuation? That's what the Republicans will want to make her out to be. I'll give Scott the opportunity to do it in a second. But as she spoke, I thought it showed a certain character, the way she talked about Joe Biden. She didn't run away from him. She gave him, I think, his due. She understands that there's some political risk to that. That actually was elevating to me in a way that I hadn't expected. So I think on the whole, this was a good night. It wasn't a huge, I don't think she moved the ball that much forward, but she certainly didn't fall back.
The do no harm principle of politicking here.
Yeah, I mean, interviews, they can be combat, they can be a conversation. And what she needed to do was communicate. And so often in the past, she comes to an interview in a way prepared to be the interrogator. And people already know she's good at asking sharp, tough questions of people who she feels deserve scrutiny. It's her being under that scrutiny that has been where the stakes have been higher. And I think today it did show that she has the ability to sit down and have that back and forth that Republicans are talking about. Can she really do it? So how many more times? I don't know how much that matters. And I do get a little nervous that in the media we're preoccupied with like, how much access, how many conversations is she going to have in the settings we deem most valuable to voters, when this is a campaign that is actually making a mark in an interesting way, reaching out to people directly.
But as said, you have also spent a couple of times now interviewing her. What did you make of how she handled it? I mean, to David's point, a little bit more comfortable now than she has been in the past.
Yeah, I think there's been a consistent story of growth. She's been in more of these settings. I think we saw that somewhat tonight. I also think to the question about how policy positions have changed, they were clearly ready with an answer about how the values have been consistent. For me, and one of the lines that stuck out was, this is a new, I think people are ready for a new way forward. She said that a couple times. It goes to David's point. I don't think there's a policy separation. that they've created with Biden. Obviously, she gave a kind of personal defense of him, but they're also very clearly trying to position her as a change candidate in the same way that Donald Trump is positioning himself as a change candidate. In some ways, it feels as if that's going to be the crux of what this comes down to in November, is whether that is bought by the electorate or not.
And interestingly, there is some polling to suggest that it's a battle right now. It's actually a live ball.
It seems that that's where this might live and die.
That's pretty hyped up.
It's really interesting because for someone who doesn't want to talk about race and gender, who doesn't want to kind of put that identity forward, it is allowing her to make the case of change without kind of saying those words. And so I thought that was really in the air of this speech. But to the point about normal versus weird, the future versus past dichotomy that they're trying to create, I think they landed that tonight. I think they want to present them as a package that is relatable to people and that is someone you feel familiar, whose story is familiar, whose message is familiar and relatable. And I think that's something that she's grown in, and we saw that this evening.
Interesting, Ashley.
So I think I would break this down into 3 parts.
Come on, guys.
Values, vision, and her voice. And I think she made it very clear that she is still committed to her values, to be an American, to be a prosecutor, even though she may have changed on some positions. And she clearly outlined where she had changed. I think on the vision, she attempted to draw the contrast without talking about Donald Trump, but still being very clear and not berating her current boss, actually. And when you think about the opposite ticket of JD Vance, where Donald Trump's vice president isn't even on the ticket anymore, we don't need to go down why that is the case, but she was clearly able to draw her vision for how she wants to take the country forward with her opportunity economy, and then her voice. I think so many Americans want to know who
again what they're saying. These are talking points.
She answered every question. Now,
she did not say how she was going to go about it and do policies.
Qualified leader, and I do think she.
Let's be honest.
A little bit, you know.
Oh, that says it all. Former National Coalition Director for Biden-Harris. Of course,
we're going to be stead about this idea of the question of who's going to change will be the fundamental.
These platforms are all the same. They get 5 people on there. They may have one conservative and the rest are all liberal or Democrat. It's all set up that way, and the host, the moderator, is leading towards the Democrats. It's all set up that way. But here.
She is making it clear that she will embrace and be a continuation of Biden's economic policy.
That's true.
What they've done. She offered no remorse, no regrets, no introspection about anything they've done. She continued to blame inflation on this fantasy price gouging idea. She had no additional thoughts on the economic situation in the country or what they've done beyond just saying, Joe Biden and I have done a great job. Now, if I were the Trump people, I would be salivating over the idea that that's how they are going to run the race. I don't believe it's tenable. I also thought it was interesting that she didn't take any responsibility at the end for telling the American people that Joe Biden was fine and he was strong. I mean, we all know that's not true. That's why he's out of the race, and she's still standing by the idea that he was fine and he's strong and that he's fine today. Nobody believes that.
That was another takeaway. He wasn't strong.
Point. Then why isn't he running?
Because he's too old. Point blank. Same reason why Donald Trump probably shouldn't be running, because he's too old and out of touch.
I think most Americans know the truth. And when you're running to be president and you're willing to look them in the face and tell them something they know that you know is not true, it does speak a little bit to your character.
Scott, and curious what you think about this, Axe. Will voters care about that part of it, which is kind of backward looking, or do they care about what's next?
Well, I think the part of what Scott raised that could be problematical if they prosecute it properly is, I think Biden deserves a lot more credit, frankly, for guiding the country through the pandemic and the economic calamity that he walked into than he gets. But inflation over a period of years has been a heavy toll on people here and around the world, but around the world is not relevant here. And so to the degree that they can say, she is going to continue doing exactly what Joe Biden was doing for people who don't have confidence in Biden's policies, that is a prospective problem. I don't think the thing about, this whole thing about, you didn't say it tonight, but you've said before, and I just disagree with this notion that Dan actually asked a question. Well, you've been there for 3.5 years. No vice president makes policy. Okay, let's just make that clear. Well, nobody has said this before. Nobody talks about the Pence years. Okay, nobody talks about the Biden years when Obama was, but nobody does that. So, but it is a challenge for her to take credit for the things that are good and to try and walk away from the things that are not.
But she did make policy, though. I mean, she said, I was the last person in the room on Afghanistan, and she cast many tie-breaking votes in the Senate.
She didn't, that's different than saying that she made the decision.
Yeah. She claimed to be his last and most principal advisor on Afghanistan. That is not.
She said
that's her word.
She said she was the last person in the room.
What does that mean to you?
She created the Afghanistan
It means that
policy.
she told him whatever she thought, and he did whatever he thought he wanted to do.
One of the things that struck me about, and as someone who, like Ested, has covered Kamala Harris before, she is a homework doer. And you can see the homework has been done in this interview. And it really kind of makes me wonder about, as we push toward this debate that's coming up, this meeting between these two, what kind of debate sparring partner is she going to be against Trump? And to me, the answer was discipline.
Yeah, she's ready to be on the defense. I don't think that is a difficult place for her to be. I think it's easier for her to be prosecutorial. And I believe, isn't the sparring partner that Trump is preparing with Tulsi Gabbard, who has actually been toe-to-toe with Kamala Harris. So I do think you are going to see kind of an energetic conversation. But part of it is, what is she like on the offense? We know what she's like on the defense.
And what is she like on the off the cuff?
I mean, yes. The question is, how much should she engage at all? I mean, the fact you need to do, you look like you need to do some work here.
I just want to reset for those of us who are joining us. This is breaking news coverage of our exclusive interview with Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. We are going to keep this conversation going. Axelrod, you were just saying.
Yeah, no, I was saying that I guess if I were advising her, I would say don't make Trump big by trying to get into back and forth with him throughout the night. Make him small. I mean, he's going to try and do what Trump does. This is his 7th presidential debate. Nobody's done it more. We know what his habits are. She should have a conversation with the American people about the future that she envisions and spar with him when she has to.
We saw her do that a little bit. I mean, when Dana asked her about Trump saying, well, she just turned black, her answer was, next question, please.
Yes. Yeah. I think she is willing to let others do that work for her and thinks that, I mean, and I think this is backed up in both evidence and reporting. People come to her when Trump attacks her in that way. That is a good thing for her. I think it rallies people around her. I mean, but I think we should think about the difference in context between 2019 and now. It wasn't just that it was off the cuff that was the problem. It was that the 2019 primary was one that had so many litmus tests about very specific kind of progressive, moderate policy questions that I think really caused her to feel torn between a lot of situations. And we had a lot of things that she ended up having to roll back the next day. Against Donald Trump, there is an ability for her to be focused on kind of consistent Democratic messaging. And I think that allows a greater comfort and ease that we saw play out today.
Let's not be mistaken. I mean, Donald Trump is tall and very loud.
Yes.
And he is very persistent. It's not going to be so easy to just say, okay, let's move on. He's going to be right there.
Yes, but I think you have to play your game. We've been talking about moving the ball down the field. It's like you are on offense. If you know the vice president is not very tall, she is a petite woman, let him look like the bully. Let him throw out red meat and you rise above the occasion. That's why I think it was so important that she didn't answer the question about race, because actually that behavior is below the office.
But I think she answered the right way, but there was another element to it that I think in a debate is going to be very important. That behavior of Donald Trump's really does raise the question, do you want this for the next 4 years, or do you want someone who's focused on your problems? I think that pivot works.
I think that's true for the debate. I think for tonight, I think she got that part exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what I would have counseled.
And you guys have underscored one of the bigger differences I've seen between her approach to this versus Biden, which is that she focuses very much on saying, I acknowledge that this economy doesn't feel good to you. You know, there's like a shift in tone. And similarly with Trump, it's much more, we saw this during the convention, undermining him and making him seem small. As she said, go small, rather than the epic bully that Biden had talked about.
I think that's because she talked about the economy had crashed under Donald Trump because of COVID, and nobody could anticipate that was going to happen, and that they did work to recover. and that there is still more work to be done. And I think that acknowledgement of
But what
the
she doesn't
American-
say is actually the data is really good if you look at the
That's
GDP.
right, 'cause
I mean,
nobody
that's what
cares
we were
about the
hearing the
data.
first
But
2
I
years.
But I didn't. I'll disagree with you on the walkbacks a little bit. I just think it's jarring to go through the progression. You wanted to ban fracking, yes. Now you don't, yes. And why is that? Well, my values haven't changed. I mean, that progression to me must sound disorienting to the people in
All right,
Pennsylvania.
Ashley, let me play that sound just so people who may have missed it. This is what she said.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I had to run right quick. Sorry, y'all. So let me just stop her. So yeah, her values have not changed. Her positions, of course, have always changed. She has not put forth any. I mean, have y'all learned or seen anything that makes you want to from watching an interview? Do you have more questions now than answers, or are you sure flat-footed that you're going to vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Waltz for president and vice president, respectively? Because I have more questions. It's actually more questions for me. I still just going to her website, don't know what specifically she plans to do. It seems like what she's stating is she was put in place essentially by the Democratic oligarch to keep things rolling from when because Joe Biden, it's clear, was not running this country. He was not running the executive branch. I had my doubts about him from the beginning. It's very clear by how the fact that she'd even take responsibility, as the other gentleman alluded to, to the fact that you told all Americans Joe Biden's fine and strong is going to be running. It's clear he wasn't. The debate said otherwise with Trump. And not just the debate, the way he spoke at press conferences, he talked to him, he lose his train of thought, he would go somewhere else. And look, it's happening. He's older. It's not that I'm holding anything against him, but let's be honest. The man was getting up there in age, 82 years old. I don't think he was fit. But anyway, it's what it is. You saw that. But like I said, if you transgenders in bathrooms, if you want more illegal immigrants in here, I mean, obviously now, neither party, I will say this, the Republicans, Donald Trump, I've not heard his plans for a black agenda. The platinum plan that they talked about, that was in 2020. But I don't know what he has now that he's set forth. Kamala Harris made it very clear a few years ago she wasn't going to do anything specifically for black folks, and she hasn't been asked anything, but all she can do, and probably will get a large number of black that image with the girl looking up to her is more symbolism. So make sure y'all smash up the likes, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into it. We want to remember, of course, my main thing for tonight, August 29th is a very important day. A lot has happened on the 29th this August. We know that, for instance, I got to say this, it is the 66th birthday of the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Today he would have been 66 years old. Born in Gary, Indiana, August 29th. He passed away, of course, in June 25th of 2009. Who else died on this day too was none other than, that's Michael Jackson there, but the Black Panther himself, Chadwick Boseman. 4 years. It's hard to believe that it's already been 4 years since this brother has passed. August 28th, actually. I'm sorry, at 42 years old, 43 years old. Although I think I've heard reports that his birthday, he was actually 42, but he passed away from cancer. So he passed away from cancer, and he had a very, although his time was short, a very profound impact on our community, on our world, because he not only played the Black Panther, but the roles he did, 42 playing Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, though he didn't look a thing like Thurgood Marshall. He had a very positive impact on the community and on the world. So it's sad that it's been 4 years, and to think that was at the time of COVID that all of this happened. But rest in power to him. But today, for me, and I've shared my stories with you all before, is the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina and Ida. And this is my way of coping with it. I've seen someone who stated that, I saw somebody post earlier, and I'm actually know the guy, but he didn't want to be part of any shit with any type of Katrina anniversary. You know, I don't like dwelling on this stuff. A lot of people, when I took issue with it. I disagreed with him. A lot of people, though, I think are fatigued and tired out when, especially if you're from New Orleans, with hearing stuff like this, Katrina every day, you know, because it's a sad story. It's hard for many people to move forward from it. We did, after all, lose thousands of lives. People moved, you know, people who died in that flood, people who were forced to move away as a result, not families being separated, friends not being able to get in touch with your friends and so forth. That's stuff that I remember. What I also remember, you know, I was 19 years old at the time. Now, it's the 19th anniversary of Katrina, but it's also the 3rd anniversary of Hurricane Ida, which also impacted New Orleans. There was a storm that hit New Orleans, although, like I stated, it didn't have the same effect. Well, I shouldn't say the same. It wasn't of, let's just say, it wasn't of larger significance as compared to Katrina. But the interesting thing about Katrina is that Katrina actually missed. Now, I'm going to get to that in a second, but Hurricane Ida, you know, caused some damage. One of the things it did, it exposed how bad energy is in the city, how they weren't up to date even 19 years, well, at that time, 16 years after Hurricane Katrina.
3 years after Hurricane Ida, Grand Isle wraps up some of the biggest improvements in its history. Tens of millions of dollars spent.
They've had commemorations. I don't want to play the video of the news or anything. They've had commemorations going on around the area, people remembering the city, what happened. Of course, the most infamous things we remember about Katrina or Ida, well, Katrina in particular, is when you saw the Superdome with the top of the Superdome ripped off. And, you know, I do this every year when there's a Katrina anniversary. I talk about it. It's therapy for me a little bit. But, you know, I remember specifically where I was. It was in Dallas, Texas. My family and I, we had relocated. We didn't relocate. We evacuated, I should say, there. We were staying at a hotel, and we only expected to be there for about 2 days. And it had happened before the year previously. There was another hurricane. I think it was Hurricane Isaac. This was in 2004, 20 years ago. I remember that looked like it was coming to New Orleans. It was a Cat 4, but it ended up going away from us. And we were in Houston. that time. But this time we were in Dallas. If people remember and may not, there actually was the MTV Music Awards that was going on that year. They were talking about whether they were going to cancel it. I remember reading about that because Katrina had actually passed through Florida and struck Miami. And usually when a storm gets in the Gulf, of course, it starts strengthening. But and sometimes they speed up where they don't strengthen that fast. And that was the expectation. But as we saw, it was slowly moving. The storm started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And by Saturday afternoon, when my dad had a pharmacy store, we had to end up closing up early. We usually closed around, we had just opened that store. We had opened around 1 o'clock, closed about 12 and 1, and we had to make a decision. Because I remember my aunt coming there, my Aunt Debbie, my great aunt, and we all had to make a decision about what we were going to do. And she came, what we're going to do? You know, when our family, whenever a storm like that happened, my grandfather was alive at that time, and we had to look out for him, of course. So we all made a decision to just go up to Dallas, which we did. And we got there Sunday night, and we only expected to be there till Tuesday anyway. And we got there Sunday, we stayed Monday, we watched the news, we saw the streets flooded, but we didn't see anything of big significance until, I want to say, that Tuesday or later that evening. So after Katrina had supposedly hit, and Katrina didn't hit New Orleans. When I say it hit the Gulf, it actually hit the Gulf. It didn't make landfall in New Orleans, which was the interesting thing. It didn't. Now, Katrina actually went and hit the Gulf. Mississippi got it far worse than New Orleans. Now, I remembered with Ida, we went to Dallas again, and Ida was a category, I think Hurricane Ida was a category 3 storm, just like Katrina. Yeah, and I did a broadcast from Dallas when I was stuck up there with you all, because I know people were checking up on me. But yeah, Ida actually had a more direct landfall than Katrina. But Ida caused damage. And it actually, when it landed and made landfall, I'm trying to remember. I don't think Ida, I think might have even been stronger than Katrina, because with Katrina, the maximum winds that were reported, it was a category 3 storm. It wasn't a 5. Power was out and so forth. But yeah, I remember, and I wrote in my book, Katrina Eyes Have Not Seen, Ears Have Not Heard. We talked about, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly the wind speed with Katrina, but it was no more than a category 2, category 3 when it made landfall. But afterwards is when the levees broke. Supposedly, of course, everybody has speculated what happened, whether they were blown or not. They've tried to debunk that. However, this is a country, this is a city that has had history with that. In 1927, my grandfather lived in Poydras and Louisiana and Braithwaite, and he even told me and remembered how they blew the levees there. With Betsy, the rumor has been, now I wasn't there, but supposedly it was reported that on his deathbed, the mayor at that time, Mayor Skiro, he had admitted that they blew the levees in Betsy. And my mom lived in the lower ninth ward, and they even remember hearing it. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know, never heard Mayor Skiro or this confession supposedly being there, even if he did confess to it. Let's just say he did. They would probably try and say and debunk it, or he was an old man who died. He didn't know what he was talking about, such and such. He was on morphine, or he had Alzheimer's, something. I don't know. What I do know is this, however, it was the biggest failure of every local, every state, and the federal branch, every branch of government failed. I do know that. I do know that there were plans before even Katrina hit. They had a Hurricane Pam, a mock storm that was run by officials here in the city, where they predicted some of the conditions that would happen if a major Category 3 storm struck New Orleans. And it was called Hurricane Pam. They actually ran it the year before Hurricane Katrina. And yet, what we saw in Hurricane Pam came forth in Katrina. Now, you can say that's a coincidence, that they just were lazy and so forth, but I beg to differ. Because the government officials, government people who are trained to actually in emergency management, who have knowledge, who have resources to do that, they were the best ones, or the ones that could actually have the opportunity to fix everything. Monies that was actually supposed to help fix the levees was cut by President Bush, supposedly. I'm talking about the lower ninth ward. I can also tell you now, when it comes to regards to fund, just how has New Orleans been rebuilt and so forth. There are places that have been rebuilt. Some people have moved back to homes, but you can see where the impact is there, and other places still look the same. It is not surprisingly that when an area I live in, like New Orleans East, there's no economic development. Why? They wanted to, at one point after Katrina, make this entire area, along with the lower ninth ward, green space, and they had talked about it before Katrina even happened. There's a reason why stores were leaving. There's a reason why whites were moving out and going to the suburbs like Jefferson and Slidell. And they take the resources with them. They take the stores with them. They'll leave you a little Walmart. They'll leave you a Winn-Dixie. Of course, it's not going to be the Winn-Dixie in Slidell. It's not going to be the Walmart out in Covington or in Kenner. Of course, it's going to be different. And it was all set up. And I remember the pain of going to be living up in Baton Rouge, seeing my home. We were homeless. We had to finishing up. We were in Dallas. We had to get out of the hotel. We go to Houston. There was no space there. We couldn't go back to Baton Rouge, where we meet this man named Albert Charles Odell, Mr. AC. And this man, who was a World War II veteran, who was actually became good friend, close with my grandfather. They bonded. He took us in. And he didn't have to. He actually was going to have his family come. And only reason he took us in, my mom, my aunt, was best friends with his late wife. And so Mr. Odell took us in. We cooked for him. My mom and my aunt, we cooked for him. We did stuff. We gave him money. But he let us stay as long as we want. And I became close with him. He and I, we enjoyed each other's company. How you doing, buddy? That was my name. He was, I'm getting torn up thinking about it, but he was a great guy. He was a Grambling Tiger, which I got a hold against him. I used to tease him about that because I was a Jaguar. I was going, and I had to go, started school up at Southern, which was all right. So I remember all of that, but the negative things you heard, like the mayor of Baton Rouge, Kip Holden at the time, uh, Kip Coon Holden is what I called him, the Coon, because he was a sellout. This was the first black mayor of Baton Rouge. And long story short, yeah, he was mayor for like 12 years up in Baton Rouge. But I remember when he said he didn't want any thugs in his city. I remember hearing stuff like that. They were talking about looting and rioting going on at the Renfrew Center, and none of that shit was happening in Baton Rouge. But that was the negative image that they played and the stereotypes that they played towards black people. So I remember that stuff. And there's never going to be anything, when you used to seeing it, we see people who get hit by tsunamis. We see it across the country where things happen, volcanoes erupt, typhoons strike, cities, earthquakes, like what happened in Japan. It's a trip when it happens to you. And it puts things in perspective. So I don't think we have, as a country, as a nation, really have learned any lessons from it because the problems are still there and have not been fixed. But I also just want to point out before I close it out, something else I remember with Katrina. This was I told y'all, this was a big land grab that they were trying to do. There was environmental racism that was playing in. There was a gentleman, Dr. Robert, I think it's Ballot. He was a professor out at Clark, Atlanta, and he talked about and raised several key points as to why. And I put that in the book. And that's why I wanted to start writing the book as well, was because of the negative things I was hearing about my city. And I felt it was easier to put that in and talk about it. But that's what we saw moving forward. And we haven't learned the ramification. We haven't learned our lessons truly, I think, as a nation, and how we handle race and natural disasters and so forth, the looting versus the shooting. It's hard to focus on all of that. But what I can say is that the people of my city are resilient. And regardless of what others, this book was made, required reading, by the way. Regardless of what others have to say, we can move. We've moved forward, and we can learn to move forward, and we can also remember and honor our dead. Now they got some stuff now. They want to actually do a Katrina anniversary, a Katrina holiday. I read there was a state senator here who's talking about making August 29th a holiday. I don't want that. I don't think that's right. Would be necessary to make it a state holiday. And I think the guy who's trying to push that Alonzo Knox, he's talking about it. I mean, I'm a survivor of the Lord. I'm a survivor of Katrina as well. I'm a resident, but this is not something we need to celebrate with a celebration and a day off. 9/11 is not considered a holiday by this nation. We can, I think, honor it. We can teach our kids about it. I mean, look, there have always been hurricanes before Katrina. There's going to be hurricanes after. We talk about Hurricane Ida. Yeah, that's my book. So yeah, they're talking about that. I think commemorating it and honoring it is one thing, but I don't think it should be a state holiday. So I don't mind having time off or anything, but I don't think this needs to be recognized as a state holiday. No. There's a lot of pain there. I don't want to commemorate it with the holiday. Now, celebrate the people that died, but also celebrate the people that live, I agree with. So there's a lot to remember with these things. Yeah, Ida exposed a lot. Yeah, Hurricane Ida. Yeah, I remember when the grid, just one thing I'll say this too about Hurricane Ida. I remember the grid for the energy, that power line being down. Yeah, all day today they're gonna be doing tributes. The power was down. Hold on, let me see. I remember this. This is one of the things I remembered by it. But hey, we were learned from the mistakes of the past so that they're not repeated in our future. So I'm gonna wrap this up, guys. I came on for 1 hour 42 minutes, and I didn't spend too much time. I didn't show any videos that much about Hurricane Katrina. Some things you can find on here. You know, I've talked about this before every year when there's an anniversary of it, and I just reflect. So that's why I reflect. I mean, I knew people. Now, I knew people. Losing a house is one thing. I met people who actually lost their loved ones, their grandbabies, their mothers, you know, and I honestly don't think I don't, and I actually was in Washington, D.C. when we marched on a campaign. I was with Acorn, doing an Acorn rally back in the year after, in January of 06. But it's not something, you know, you think you have problems, but losing property is nothing. You can always rebuild. You can't replace a life. But like I said, move forward and remember those that passed in that storm. But we also learn what we can do to make sure the mistakes of Katrina, the mistakes of Ida, are not repeated in us in a society like this, in a modern society. So with that being said, guys, I'm just going to wrap this up. You all make sure you smash up the likes, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. We've had a low night tonight. I think everybody's tuning in to watch Colorado to see what Deion Sanders is going to do. I'm going to wrap it up because I want to see Coach Prob. Come on, yo. I want to see him and Shador pull it off, and his other kids. So y'all make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Enjoy Labor Day. I don't know if I'm going to do a show Sunday. If I do a show, it might be very early, like either Sunday or Saturday. I'll come and do a live, but I'm going to I think I'm going to enjoy the weekend off, y'all. So, or a video may drop. Who knows? All right. Y'all be safe. Be one, be blessed, and be safe, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you if you're watching on Rumble, X, or YouTube, and I'll see y'all in the next one. I'll holla. Peace.